What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? You are now listening to me, Casa on American Freedom Radio. And as usual, I am your humble host, Niko House. Of course, I want to thank everyone for tuning in as usual. As a special thank you, I do want to go ahead and thank our patrons on Patreon. And if you want to become a monthly contributor to help contribute to the network, to help contribute to the show, all you have to do is go to www.patreon.com/mikasa. And you can join our one follow $1 campaign where we show the mainstream media that they will not invest in the truth. Then of course, we will invest in those who do. Also, make sure that if you have not yet, that you go to www.mcscnetwork.com to check on more news, updates, political, social, sports, anything you could think of. We have it right there. Go ahead and bookmark that page. And if you have an iOS device, you can actually set that to an app on your home screen. So make sure you do that. Make sure that you follow, if you have not yet, American Freedom Radio on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. They have a lot of great shows, not just myself, but several others as well. And I guarantee that every time you watch one of those shows, you will learn something new that day. I promise you that. So I find myself learning new things every day when I listen to it. So do that. Follow American Freedom Radio. Follow MCSC Network on Twitter if you have not as well. So, you all know, we had an interesting march this weekend. It was called the March for Our Lives. A lot of people, they feel a lot of different ways about this march. I can't say I blame them. I'm trying to figure out which side, which part I should deal with first. Cause I don't want anybody to feel as if they are, wrong for supporting it or wrong for critiquing it. I don't think that any of those sides are necessarily wrong, but I do believe that there is one side in particular that needs to be given some context. Now, there are people who are just woefully at this point in love with the idea of this march. They're all inspired by the fact that these children that are so young, 17 years old, these children are so young, so passionate, and they organize that entire march by itself or by themselves. Yeah, no, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. And I'm not saying, there are a lot of people saying, no, clearly it was some adults that organized it. And a lot of people have a lot of different, they have a lot of different opinions about where the money came from and how it got set into motion and blah, 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 blah. What I'm telling you, this isn't in my opinion. This isn't like some kind of disgruntled analysis where I'm just so pissed about gun rights. Like that, the gun rights conversation has become so convoluted that I don't even know what the hell anybody's talking about anymore in regards to gun rights. And last thing I heard, somebody talking about gun rights and then the fact that Emma Gonzalez had a patch on her or a Cuban jacket on, that she is a communist, and so that conversation has been taken way out of left field. And I'm not really down with the ad hominem attacks on Emma Gonzalez. She's a teenage girl. She doesn't know any better. She thinks she's doing something right. So from that regard, she's taken on the challenge and she's approached it as she should have. Now, that does not mean that Emma Gonzalez is not naive. And I want to make that perfectly clear. And what I'm about to tell you, a lot of you have probably already seen at this point, if you have not seen my video on YouTube, talking about this march. I was talking specifically about the fact that this march was not organized by kids. It was not organized by high schoolers, people. I want to make this as brief as possible so I can go into the analytical part, but it needs to be understood that this was not organized by kids, and that is very important. I'm going to explain why in a second. How do I know this? Well, from a first-hand perspective, in South Florida, where the shooting happened, I was actually requested to be the person who multicast the event. However, at the time, I did not know the event was going to be called March for Our Lives. The senator who contacted me did not know the event was going to be called March for Our Lives, nor did the activist who contacted me knew it was going to be called March for Our Lives. None of us knew that. And in fact, I even asked them several times, do you know what the event's going to be called? They're like, well, we're playing it by ear. We don't know yet. So that's interesting to have an event that you already plan on paying people for, but you don't know what it's going to be called. But hey, they were both good progressives, honest people. Checked the senator's voting record, good to go. Checked the activists. We had a lot of friends that comment. I looked at their posts, very progressive cat. So didn't think anything nefarious was going on, but at the same time, a lot of times, what do they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I kind of had that feeling in the pit of my stomach that, of course, that's what was happening again. And unfortunately, it kind of did happen. I find out, well, first of all, the local television stations down here ended up having rights to this march for some reason. So I was no longer going to be the multicaster to broadcasting on all the social media platforms, et cetera, et cetera. And then some other things happened. But the moral of the story is the rights to broadcast and produce this event had already been given to television stations, which kids don't have the ability to do. The March for Our Lives 501c3, is it 501c3? It's a 501c3 or 501c4. Don't quote me on that. I know it's either one of those, but whatever one the dark money one is, where you can have unlimited donations from anonymous sources, that's the one they're filed under. That was actually filed under the Women's March president. So it was not organized by kids, okay? It wasn't. I mean, I know it may break some people's hearts, and that feel-good story that you all, the feel-good feeling that you all had regarding that, it's not real. It was done on purpose. Now, why is this important? Well, they have been selling you this story for quite some time as if it was, in fact, organized by and for children. And the reason that they do that is because they want to take something the Women's March fell short in and then translate that into success in this particular venture. What do I mean by that? The Women's March, they thought they were slick. The Women's March, they thought that they were going to be able to bring progressives like myself and then just blindly walk out talking about the blue wave, talking about hating Donald Trump and doing whatever we can to get them out of office, even if it means putting in establishment Democrats. That wasn't what happened. In fact, it was the total opposite. We woke up. Whereas last year, obviously, people were unaware of what the Women's March was, but when we caught on to it, they tried to repeat that outcome, and it doomed. It was a failure. It was a miserable failure. They got like a little over half or a little less than half of what they got last year for the Women's March. And so the identity politics in that department was not working. 20 million people left the Democratic Party. You think that 1 million going out to march for women is going to do something have a different outcome in 2018? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They know this. But what can kids get behind? People can get behind kids. Excuse me. People can get behind kids. People can get behind the youth. They can get behind their innocence, their raw passion. And to be quite honest and quite specific, they can get behind white kids. So if you're curious as to why this is important, because we can take a little look at what has actually happened since the shooting. So this nonprofit was formed, obviously, March for Our Lives. These kids were pushed to the forefront to the point of being, millions of followers between all three or four of them, which is insane. I don't give a damn who you are. Like Sean King, I don't even like that guy, but this dude doesn't even have 1 million followers on Twitter, and he's been a consistent force in liberal journalism for 5 years now, 6 years. Was extremely popular during the primary election. And he doesn't even have 1 million followers. He's getting close, but he doesn't have 1 million followers. So I'm supposed to expect, or I'm supposed to not be suspicious when Emma Gonzalez, who didn't even have a Twitter, wakes up one day with 1 million followers in 2 days? Come on, people. Y'all a little bit wiser than this. But they've done everything to activate kids. They've done everything to march them out of school. They've done everything to get them bused to these various places: Tallahassee, DC, LA, San Francisco, San Diego, Colorado, I think a couple to New York. I know, South Florida. But you know what hasn't been done? And nobody has realized it? All these kids screaming and marching. Rah, rah, this is enough. That's it. People, you know, the Democrats haven't introduced a damn thing at all whatsoever. I think that in Florida, they just tried to issue a weapons ban. They knew it wouldn't pass, but that was supposed to be for political games. They wanted to be able to say they wouldn't pass this legislation that totally bans all weapons in a southern red state. Can you believe that? No strategy in that. They were never expecting they were never expecting to achieve a desired outcome. So going forward, they try and use these marches to galvanize the youth. Use their naivety to vote in establishment Democrats, thinking because they have a blue or a donkey or a blue check mark by their name that they're actually progressive, that they're actually for change. See, unfortunately, these kids, even though we live in the information age, they're still high schoolers. They're not worried about the same things that we're worried about. They're not paying attention nowhere nearly as close as we are. And what I mean by that is they haven't realized that these shootings, for some reason, the mass shootings, over 95% of them happen in democratically elected districts with a high income class, with upper middle class white kids. That's where these shootings happen. Now, they also don't know, for example, that the reason that they didn't have the exits that they have requested prior to this shooting, and they requested, because they have some regulations that they have to follow, and they were trying to follow them, but they never got the funds to do so. The reason why, or one of the reasons why, is because Debbie Wasserman Schultz steals funds out of their school district. Millions every year. Elijah Manley covered this. He's running for school board at large in Broward County. That's one of the reasons that he is running. Elijah Manley discovered this, and he's been stalked and harassed ever since he's let this information out into the public. The Democratic Party has attacked him at every corner. The FBI, Secret Service, walked up to him and kicked him out of a Nancy Pelosi, Debbie Wasserman Schultz meeting because of this news that he knows about the Democratic Party, about Debbie Wasserman Schultz specifically. Now, once again, people, they allocate these funds outside of the school district into the pockets of personal interest and big money interests. And here's where it gets funny. That same money, they then, because they have to use this to galvanize the rest of the nation, they take that money, they invest it into these buses, this 501c, this nonprofit called March for Our Lives, setting up the infrastructure, paying for these permits. All that money to react to a shooting that could have been prevented. Do you see the difference? Do you see where this could be a little problematic? Because now these kids who are ambitious, they're about to go to college, and they're going to tell their stories from their very, very narrow lens, their very, very limited experience. And they're going to go say, hey, we're voting Democrat because those Republicans, X, Y, and Z. Yeah, the Democrats did not introduce gun legislation. The national level Democrats. California, they did not either. They have pretty strict gun laws in California anyway. But the national level Democrats have failed you at every turn. And they had the House. They had, and not on, and on top of that, let's be very, very honest, people. Let's be very, very clear about something. They didn't introduce any legislation during the entire Obama administration. Obama did a couple of executive orders, one which was discriminatory against mental health patients. It was like they tried to make it seem like it would be harder for mental health patients to get guns, but that actually was not it. It was like if you saw it was something as general that if you saw a psychiatrist ever, you can have a gun. Like I see a psychiatrist for my ADHD medication. Like, does that mean I'm not fit to own a weapon? No, it's ludicrous. And yet, people don't see a logistical or pragmatic or practical problem with what's going on. You're leading yourselves into more of nothing. That's the moral of the story. And I just want to be clear about that. I don't like David Hoggs or whatever the hell his name is. I don't like him. I just don't like his face. I'm not going to front. Don't like him. I think he's inauthentic. I don't believe he's genuine. I don't believe that he actually cares. I think that he knows what to say. He is a debater. I was in the same debate league in high school that he's in currently. I know they teach you how to finesse the game. I know they teach you how to win over the crowd. I'm not an idiot. I know how the game goes. He's a little bit more versed than the rest of them. So even though they push for the pictures and for the cameos and for the headlines, a lot of the times Emma Gonzalez is the focus. But when it comes to the speeches, most of the time David Hoggs is the focus, specifically because he's the most well-spoken. At least he's the most experienced when it comes to public speaking. But I don't like him. Emma Gonzalez is a different story. I think that she's a very genuine person. And I don't like people attacking her. How much of a man are you for attacking a 17-year-old girl? Seriously. She's misguided. Absolutely. The Democratic Party is extremely good at misdirection. She probably has no idea what the history of the Democratic Party when it comes to the LGBTQ community is. Probably has no idea what their record is on the Latino community as well. But that doesn't mean she's an evil person. It doesn't mean you have to attack her with ad hominem attack. And on top of that, you're going to push her farther away from reality by doing that, because then it becomes, once again, us versus them. My goal is that maybe she will start looking at some of the legitimate critiques, which unfortunately there are not enough out there. There are not enough legitimate critiques coming from the progressive left outside of myself and a few others. Very few others. There's not enough legitimate critiques out there. So what that ends up doing is turning this into a us versus them, us versus them, us versus them situation. And that's not what we need. What I would like is for her to take that platform and say, listen, I know I've been talking about this issue as if it is a Democrat versus Republican, or if this is a strictly Republican problem. But the truth of the matter is these shootings are happening in democratically elected districts, and they've even happened during democratically elected presidents, democratically elected legislatures, and none of this stuff has changed. So why today are we pretending as if Marco Rubio or Mitch McConnell or Paul Ryan is the issue? They are the issue, but they are the issue in so much as that the Democratic Party is just as much as an issue as part of the corporate establishment duopoly. They're non-unique. If you're going to go to Paul Ryan's or Mitch McConnell's office, you better take your ass to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office. You better take your ass to you can go to Elizabeth Warren's office, John Lewis. Like, you need to sit your butt or take your butt to the offices of all the legislators who have been pretending to be on your side, pretending to be efficacious when they are not. Not only are they not efficacious, but they're not even trying. They're not even making attempts to be. They're using you for political games. I know. They just tried to do the same to me, and it wasn't even. And like I said, the two people who brought me on to that were not being, they weren't being nefarious. They legitimately did not know the name of the march. And I understand that. I get that, actually. They didn't know a lot, like they didn't have a lot of the answers to the questions that I needed, and they were trying to get them to me. They brought me onto that, knowing I was an independent, knowing I was nonpartisan, knowing how I felt about the gun control issue, knowing that I was not going to be there to blame Republicans. They knew all of this, and they were still ecstatic about having me onto that march that ended up being March for Our Lives. In the moment that they they loved me, the senator loved me, the activists loved me, they wanted me to do it, and my assumption is whoever is in charge of March for Our Lives figured out, they're like, oh, hell no, we can't have not that guy. They know what I'm about. In South Florida, they definitely know what I'm about. And that's about the truth and nothing but the truth. So eventually, I was relegated to a young activist forum where we were supposed to take a nonpartisan approach to gun reform. But I just decided, no, I'm not going to let you all co-opt my voice and co-opt my message. Which is that gun restriction, gun reform is necessary, but the gun reform that I'm thinking about goes far beyond the idea that, if we outlaw ARs, that nobody will be able to get ARs. Maybe it'd be less easy. I can agree with that. But our issues are, for some reason, happening with one specific demographic when it comes to mass shootings. And that needs to be addressed. Just like I can say, if one specific demographic is experiencing gang violence, which happens to be my demographic and Mexican demographic, like or South American in Central America. And that's okay because I know why we're experiencing it. I understand the history, I understand institutional racism, systematic racism, but I understand that. So that's why I can admit if it's our demographic, that means it's a problem that is specific and particular to us. And we have to understand where in history did the country and the politicians and, the local municipalities fail those people time and time again. And how do we address it? Economic inequities, lack of mental health care or health care in general, the stress that comes with living in this country when you're constantly living paycheck to paycheck, the stress of racial tensions in this country because we have one party who is playing identity politics, constantly pitting people against other people. We have another man in office who is a bloviated racist, who said a bunch of racist stuff. Whether you like him or not, you can't deny he said some racist stuff. And he pandered to an audience of a party who is dog whistled about racism all the time. So these are all issues. The divide in this country, the stress, the level of this consistent fight or flightness that we have. It's really what it is, flight or flightism, or fight or flightism in this country. And we're always on edge. We're one step away from being set off all the time. And we think for some reason that if we change a couple of laws that we're not going to see a mass shooting again. And then on top of that, we think of quote unquote gun reform and we talk about quote unquote mental health issues. But the Democratic Party, nor the Republican Party for that matter, cares about either one of those in the context of the issue in its totality. In other words, we can look at, for example, the young man who was shot in Sacramento. The young man was shot in Sacramento for holding up a cell phone. Why? Because of the paranoia that has ridden our police departments and the police institution. And the fact that we have people who are mentally incapable of being on the streets and policing people with weapons at hip still allowed to do so with very limited checks on this and still getting away with it with very limited accountability. So at this point, when you take an argument that requires a multiplicity of approaches to fix, like we have very unique racial tensions in this country. Yes, we have unique. Everybody has colorism issues, which, by the way, is the word that a lot of you are looking for when you're trying to describe what racism is, when it's black versus white or black on white, whatever, or white on black. We have very unique issues in that regard in this country. The only country that has maybe close to this is Brazil. We have a very unique gun relationship, gun culture, if you will, in this country, specifically because we know that the ability to fight a tyrannical government is necessary and has been necessary in the past. We can go into details about whether or not our weapons would actually do anything, but we have a very complex gun culture because of that. And we have a very unique political dynamic because, well, messages in this country, more than any, have been co-opted time and time again with nothing being done. And people, for some reason, have this, they're confused as to what the Democratic Party has done for them. They haven't done a damn thing for them. If we have gotten anything done, if we have had any progress for marginalized people, it has been through our own efforts. The efforts of those who have suffered and got tired of waiting for the Democratic Party to stop preaching and start practicing. But hey, those kids, they, as long as they keep speaking loud enough and y'all keep, pressuring them or praising them, then we just expect everything to fix itself. Like, it's the overall message, but do you all know what the overall message is? Because y'all swear you do. I'm still waiting for the overall message to be told to me. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, people. So if we're going to see some legitimate change, which I truly and sincerely hope to see, if we're going to see some legitimate change, we need to start talking about these issues in a substantive and progressive way. And I say progressive way, what I mean is a substantive and way, something that is going to yield some type of progression. Any type of progression at this point. Any type at this point. Because Lord knows that has not been the case thus far. So I want to go on to our next topic for the evening, which is YouTube. Now, I want you all to... I want to read this article. The original, I think it was originally done by Yahoo, but I want to read to you all this article. Oh, it was originally done by AP on March 14th. It says, YouTube says it's cracking down on conspiracy videos, though it is scant on the details. Conspiracy videos abound on YouTube, whether it's about the earth being flat or school shootings being staged. YouTube, its parent company Google, and Twitter are all facing challenges. They're all facing challenges with widespread misinformation and propaganda and fake news. Party people. Holy crap. I don't even know how to even begin to talk about the irony of it. YouTube, guys, it's cracking up. They're cracking down on fake news. And yet, I'm the one, myself and Tim Black and Jamal Thomas and others, Jimmy Dore, Lee Camp, they're cracking down on fake news, and yet we're the ones who are being censored. I haven't had to retract 17 or what? No, actually it's more than that. But I haven't had to retract multiple articles damn near weekly or monthly at this point like CNN has. I haven't had to retract multiple articles and stories like New York Times has. And yet, we're the ones being censored. You know what? I want to look at something. So let's go ahead and do a little count of the fake stories that I put out versus the fake stories that CNN and others, mainstream media, if you will, versus what they've put out thus far. So if we look at The Intercept, I believe that's by Glenn Greenwald. I want to make sure. Yeah, Glenn's my guy. I like Glenn Greenwald. So with Glenn Greenwald, who is usually like myself, well on the we're always on the fake story bandwagon. And here we go. Once again, the U.S. media suffered its most humiliating debacle in ages and now refuses all transparency over what happened. Friday was one of the most embarrassing days for U.S. media. And the humiliation orgy was kicked off by CNN with MSNBC and CBS close behind, and countless pundits, commentators, and operatives joining the party throughout the day. By the end of the day, it was clear that several of the nation's largest, most influential news outlets had spread an explosive but completely false news story. A completely false news story to millions and millions of people. While refusing to provide any explanation as to how it happened, the spectacle began Friday 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time when the most trusted name in news, quote unquote, spent 12 straight minutes on air flamboyantly hyping an exclusive bombshell report that seemed to prove that WikiLeaks last September had secretly offered the Trump campaign and even Donald Trump himself special access to the Democratic National Committee emails before they published on the internet. As CNN sees the world, this would prove collusion between Trump family and WikiLeaks, and more importantly, between Trump and Russia, since the U.S. intelligence community regards WikiLeaks as an arm of Russian intelligence, and therefore so does the U.S. media. But yeah, it turned out that story was completely and totally false. So that's one for the mainstream media, or one for them, zero for us yet. We still haven't had to retract any stories. So, but that was December 2017, by the way. Oh, September 28th, 2017. Yet another major Russia story falls apart. Is skepticism permissible yet? Once again, this is by my man, Glenn Greenwald. Last Friday, most major media outlets touted a major story about Russian attempts to hack the U.S. voting systems based exclusively on claims made by the Department of Homeland Security. Russians, quote unquote, Russians attempted to hack election systems in 21 states in the run up to last year's presidential election. Officials said on Friday, began this USA Today story, similar to how other outlets presented this extraordinary claim. The official story was explosive for obvious reasons and predictably triggered an instant decrees that, of course, went viral, declaring that the legitimacy of the outcome of the 2016 U.S. presidential election is now in doubt. Okay, first of all, the legitimacy of the outcome of the 2016 U.S. presidential election is definitely in doubt, but not for the reasons touted by mainstream media. That is for damn sure. The reason that it's in doubt is because you cheated. You cheated the one guy who could have and should have won. You cheated. You're surprised that the outcome, like, I don't know how many times I have to say this. I really don't. I'm going to say it again anyway. One thing you all need to understand is that the moment you cheat someone who built his entire campaign on including people into the political process, getting people registered into the party, the moment you did that, you lost because his opponent would have been someone else who actually did the same thing, a very grassroots-esque campaign, populist campaign. where he was not afraid to let his personality show and his imperfection, his political imperfections, is how he carries himself, show. And so you got Hillary Clinton, who won by suppressing the vote using a Republican establishment tactic. And that's why she lost. It's pretty simple. I don't know how else to tell you all. Seriously, I really do not know how else to tell you all. But so Russians had nothing to do with the 2016 election outcome. Hillary Clinton cheating did. But essentially, that story that was reported was proven false as well. Glenn Greenwald covers that one pretty substantially as well. And then, oh look, damn, another one for all my DJ Khaled fans out there. This is from consortiumnews.com. The NYT, New York Times, finally retracts the Russiagate canard. Exclusive. A founding Russiagate myth is that all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies agreed that Russia hacked into and distributed Democratic emails, a falsehood that the New York Times has belatedly retracted, reports Robert Perry. And of course, you all know that was June of 2017. So that's 3 stories that they've had to retract that were proven totally false, that was based on unadulterated conspiracy theory, people. And yet, here we are. We're people like myself, independent journalists like myself, like we can, like Tim Black. Hell, even, on the for some reason, conservatives think that they're the only ones who have been harmed by the censorship. Oh no! If anything, y'all don't even know. Having your accounts deleted may be like, because you can always get those back. And hell, if I was y'all, I would too. if that happened, if like my account just got straight up deleted. But we're getting suppressed. And there's a difference. Because YouTube is your stomping ground. So whenever you get suppressed, people are going to fight for you tooth and nail to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But progressives aren't as popular on YouTube. We're I don't want to say the establishment progressive, but the ones who told that narrative of always talking about leftist issues and how the right's always evil, and the only ones that the only candidates or politicians that they're comfortable critiquing is usually Hillary. Maybe Debbie Wasserman Schultz if they're feeling a little frisky that day. But progressives are the ones who are truly hurt, the actual progressives, the ones who will call out the Democratic establishment, who will tell the uncomfortable truths about whether or not the, Bernie Sanders Russian rhetoric, for example. How it's not cool. It's not cool to talk about that type of stuff, bro. What's also something that is not okay, something that is not talked about, is the fact that we are hurt on both YouTube and Facebook. And once again, you think y'all are getting hurt. Y'all get hurt a little bit. We get hurt a lot, because the more that your message as a conservative is bolstered, it makes the left, it feeds into the identity of the left. As in, they like having y'all say stuff that pisses off the left so that the left can, respond, and we can play into the whole right-left paradigm thing. This duopoly, this imaginary dichotomy that the Democrats are somehow different than the Republicans. Which is not the case. But some people believe it. Now, here's why we get screwed. Because if you're not on the right, pissing off the left and giving them reasons to respond with their self-righteousness and moral equivocations, and you're on the left, touting the establishment liberal narrative, then you're probably somebody like myself, whose entire message is shaped around telling the truth. And that, more than anything, is unwanted on all of the major social media platforms. All of the major broadcasting platforms cannot stand us. Probably for good reason, right? Because we're not going to feed into the left-right nonsense. I can critique the left and I can critique the right, but what I refuse to do is to pretend as if they're legitimately different. So what I hope to see, and something that I'm actually working on, is a different platform. I can't reveal it yet. I can't reveal it, but no, it's coming soon. It's coming sooner rather than later. And it's something I've been working on with a couple of colleagues of mine. I don't want to call it social media because it's going to be better than social media. I don't want to call it oh man. See, YouTube be pissed me off, y'all. But anyway, so I don't want to call it social media because I want it to be better than social media. I don't want to call it it's something different than Facebook. It's something different than YouTube and Twitter. But we're working on something that will be better than all of them. If you're on YouTube and you got the wrong update, my bad. That's not what it's supposed to be about, so ignore that. But yeah, we're trying to transition, not necessarily away from Facebook, because we don't want to tell journalists that they should leave any platform that you're doing even moderately well on, because it's important to bring people over, if that makes sense. You want to take the people who think that Facebook and Twitter and YouTube is the only way and bring them over into the light, if you will. You get what I'm saying? So that's what we're doing now. One of the things that I'm working on, obviously, and you all know, of course, that I have the website that we work on. The website that I'm still working on it, even though it's done. Look, that stuff is a headache. Stuff is a headache, y'all. It really is. It is managing it, and I gotta. By the way, I'm looking for a social media marketing in not webmaster, but somebody who is moderately good with WordPress. I'm looking for an intern, actually. So if that's something any of you all would be interested in, feel free to send an email to Go to Niko for the people @gmail.com. Once again, that's Niko for the people @gmail.com. So if you're good with websites and you're good at using social media, please reach out to me, because I am looking for an intern in that department. So the next thing that I want to talk about briefly, and then I'm going to finish it when we get back from the break, is the total hypocrisy from Facebook and the whole, what is it called? The Cambridge Analytica. That's a pretty spiffy name. I'm not going to lie. When you hear Cambridge Analytica, you're like, yo, they're legit. They're legit. Anything with Cambridge, and then like you take a regular word and make it a at the end. Like, think about it. If you're like mailing off a box and they're like, hey, where do you want to send this to? I want to send this to Cambridge Analytica. It sounds legit. It sounds like you're going to do something really sophisticated with that box. So, and they are legit. I mean, when I say legit, I mean they're legitimately good at doing their job, because apparently they helped give Barack Obama's election in 2012. I don't know if I fully buy that narrative, to be totally honest with you, I don't believe that that's what gave Obama the election in 2012. I want to be very clear about something. 93% of the black population voted for Barack Obama. That probably helped just a little bit. Little bit, sweet little bit. But in all seriousness, he was very popular amongst the youth. Now, do I believe it gave him an unfair advantage? Yeah. It's called strategy. It's a political strategy. Now, here's where it gets a little bit dicey. Now, Facebook has been pretending as if they are neutral in this battle in politics. They have not been neutral at all. In fact, just days before or days after, they critiqued Donald Trump from getting help from Cambridge Analytica, which is actually I hate this. Like, you remember how many times during the election, and I think people who are pretty active know exactly what I'm talking about. How many times during the election that if somebody got opposition research or even went out their way to cheat someone else, we were told that's just how politics is. That's just politics. That's not politics. You can't just cheat. But something like what Barack Obama did, actually, Facebook was in the wrong for giving that data. Facebook was in the wrong for allowing Cambridge Analytica and Barack Obama to use that data for political purposes. Facebook was. So when Trump did it, it was a huge deal. And, you know, Facebook lambasted Trump and CNN lambasted Trump and everybody went on the attack. And, you know, anytime Trump conducts any type of opposition research, it's considered a big deal with the mainstream media. And these are normal things. Like, opposition research is normal. Here's what's not normal. What's not normal is for a social media platform, which is, I guess, well, I can't say it's not normal because we don't know. But what's not normal is when a social media platform does what it did by literally telling Barack Obama, and this is according to one of their employees, that, you know, you're on our side, so we don't mind helping you type thing. You know, you're on our side. For YouTube, by the way, I see that y'all have been getting the buffer situation going on. I don't know why. Y'all, listen, it's YouTube. That's what they do now. I'm not gonna lie to you, but yeah. Anyway, so I'm curious. You know, just before I'm gonna go. Like I said, I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail whenever, right before we get into the call-in portion of the show, or right when we get into the call-in portion of the show, so that you all have some just some brief background on what's going on and why it is such a big deal. But like I said, it's a little difficult for me to be like, and it's funny because it makes you inevitably sound like a Trump supporter when you say stuff like, well, I mean, if Obama was allowed to do it, why wasn't Trump allowed to do it? I don't understand. It makes you feel like a Trump supporter when you have to come out and say, why do I have to tell Facebook not to give data to a candidate, one candidate, and not give it to the other candidate? Why do I have to inform Facebook that you have a responsibility to protect the data and the information of your users, your consumers? Because what happens if that data gets released out into the public, like what we have seen in the past? Well, we know what happens. You might win an election. Shit, apparently. Cambridge, from what we know now, Cambridge Analytica is like they're like batting 1,000. They won with both Obama and Trump, apparently. But I really don't like the narrative that has been surrounding it. And like I said, when we come back from break, I'm going to go into this Forbes article before we start taking calls, because I think it does a very good job of highlighting this hypocrisy and like what the mainstream media is expecting from one side of the political aisle versus the other. Or once again, it just could be an all-out assault against Republicans. But I don't like it. I feel like it's so dangerous. I'm a very forward-thinking person, people. I'm a very forward-thinking person. And so whenever I see one party, one person benefiting, or a whole social media platform benefiting from helping one party benefit in winning an election like that, and then making it seem as if somebody else used their platform to side with, because then you got to get into this philosophical debate. If Russia did use some type of troll farm during the election and Trump hired them, maybe if you want to get him on, he didn't he didn't practice the right protocol for whatever reason, you can get him on that. But if he hired someone to do that, wouldn't that be because what we're seeing is that if Obama did that, as long as he filed the paperwork correctly, by the way, then he would be a genius, because that's what they referred to him as when he got Facebook to do what they wanted to do, to give him that data. So I will be very interested in your thoughts when it comes to that. I'm going to read the Forbes article when we come back. When we do come back, people, make sure that you go to, or make sure that you call into 218-339-8525. Once again, that's 218-339-8525. Make sure that you call in. Make sure that you have your questions ready when we get back from break. It's only going to be about 5 minutes, so don't get too antsy. You can talk about any of these topics. March for Our Lives. We're talking about March for Our Lives, censorship, social media censorship, and YouTube censorship, and Cambridge Analytica. So once again, when we get back from break, that number is going to be 218-339-8525. 218-339-8525. Talking about March for Our Lives, Cambridge Analytica. There you go. March for Our Lives, Cambridge Analytica, and this YouTube censorship that we've been experiencing. I hope that you all have gotten a little bit, let me see. I see some people, let's see what we got here. Some people are still telling me that they're getting buffered. Let me ask YouTube. Still experiencing. Go ahead and get right before the break. Experiencing. We'll be back, people.
Institution. American Freedom Radio.
Simply
Simply Clean Foods is dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMOs plus testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away valuable groceries ever again. Take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Simply Clean Foods' primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. Go to simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net today.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
I have this feeling, man, because you know there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. Handful, very small elite run and own these corporations, which include the mainstream media. I have this feeling who's ever elected president, like Clinton was, no matter what your promises you promise on the campaign trail, blah, 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 when you win, you go into this smoky room with the 12 industrialist, capitalist scum who got you in there, and you're in this smoky room, and this little film screen comes down, and a big guy in a cigar, roll the film. And it's a shot of the Kennedy assassination from an angle you've never seen before. It looks suspiciously off the grassy knoll. And then the screen goes up, and the lights come up, and they go to the new president. Any questions? Just what my agenda is. First we bomb Baghdad. You got it.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches.
339-8525 and make sure you follow those directions. Last time, y'all were like, oh, I don't understand. Why can't I see anything? And it was like, y'all didn't listen to the directions. So that's what happens sometimes. Got to follow directions if you want to get on the phone call. But before we do that, and I'll let you all warm up your questions, I want to go ahead and read something from or about the last thing we were just talking about, which is the hypocrisy of the mainstream media when discussing the Cambridge Analytica data mining for Donald Trump versus how they covered it when it came to Barack Obama, when we just recently found out that Barack Obama essentially got Facebook to hand him all the marbles. In other words, all of your personal information actually went to to Barack Obama in order for him to use that to coerce you and mostly young voters into voting for him in the 2012 election. Now, this was done in Forbes. This article is from Forbes. Because as I wrote earlier today, the story of Cambridge Analytica that the press, public, and elected officials seem to have fixated itself on is that of a rogue company run amok with breached data that manipulated unwitting Americans into electing the candidate of the company's choice. The company denies all of the allegations. A key thread of the narrative over the last 3 days has centered on the alleged impact of the company's data analysis on the 2016 presidential election, with the undertone that, if true, the company's actions somehow represent something new and unsettling in using data to advance a political campaign. To add a bit of perspective to this debate, it is worth looking back at two key ways in which the Obama campaign pioneered the modern-day data-driven campaign that is at the center of the Cambridge Analytica debate. At the time of his election and re-election, Obama's data analytics researchers were heralded as technological heroes for the way they modernized how political campaigns wrangle data in pursuit of votes. Outlets sang their praises as digital masterminds and lauded their unorthodox approaches. By the way, if you don't know, unorthodox in modern political dialogue means you're a Russian spy. I mean, I'm according to numbers. I'm not saying. I'm just saying that's what they're saying. So, going forward, the campaign was able to heavily optimize its advertising efforts by quite literally reaching into the privacy of American living rooms and understanding what they were watching second by second. While the data didn't offer address level resolution as the post description above, it was sufficient for the campaign to generate exquisitely high resolution advertising models that achieved up to 20% greater efficiency for the Barack Obama campaign. And so this is just one example of how Barack Obama used data from social media, from people's personal accounts, without the permission of them. So, a lot of that stuff, like for a poll, for example, for you to be counted in a Quinnipiac poll, you actually have to opt in to participate. I would say most polls, you have to opt in to participate. This, however, was not the case for Barack Obama. This, if Trump had done it in the same time, well, maybe not back then. It's a little bit different now, but he did do a version of, or he didn't do it, Cambridge Analytica did, but a version of this in the 2016 general election, and he is being critiqued as if this is something new. Whereas one campaign and the staff of that campaign were considered technological geniuses for coming up with this method, the Trump campaign is being considered, that they cheated, that they're Russian bots, that every time some information comes out about how Trump could have and possibly may have won, it's always a aha moment. Every time something like a strategy comes out. Remember when Julian Assange tried to reach out to Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr. If they said, hey, if y'all have any information about the Republican Party or any information about yourself that would prove this nonsense wrong, we would love to have it so we can post it, because that's what WikiLeaks does. And then, and Julian Assange, by the way, admitted that months before CNN decided to cover it. So it got released months before that. And then months later, it came out that Julian Assange emailed Donald Trump Jr. And they were like, aha! Clearly, you cheated. And you were trying to cheat for Donald Trump by telling Donald Trump if he has information about the Republican Party that he should release it. Or I don't understand exactly where the logic is in a lot of this analysis from the mainstream media, but it's clearly hypocritical. And I would love to know your thoughts on it. So give us a call. Give us a call at 218-339-8525. Once again, that number is 218-339-8525. Give us a call. In case you were just now tuning in on Facebook Facebook, I guess, or you may just now be tuning in on YouTube. Today, we discussed the March for Our Lives and the reasons as to why I'm not on really any side of I am on the side of the fence that it needs the March for Our Lives needs to be contextualized much better than it has been by either side. Like the right having this idea that these kids are coming to take all of their guns is ludicrous. Relax, guys. Now, on the other side of that fence, the left thinking that these kids are just these super connected, super networked children with the capacity to be in high school, go to all these, CNN, MSNBC meetings and 60 Minutes and they're featured constantly. They've been back and forth between Florida, New York, California, and DC pretty much since the incident's taken place. And so I'm pretty confident in saying that it would be somewhat naive to think that these kids were able to do all that, maintain their school responsibilities, and then organize a march that a lot of the things you have to do, you have to be 18 to actually get done. Like trying to get a permit, for example. That's some good water, people. But and I was also explaining earlier that I have, if you're curious as to whether or not the kids really did organize this, I'm telling you, it did not happen. It didn't happen. I know because I was part of the organization, but I was in on the organization of the event before we actually knew it was going to be called March for Our Lives. We were told that they didn't know what the name was going to be. We were told that it was kind of something separate, that it was just for Parkland students. I was supposed to be a part of the South Florida one. One of the things that really kind of drove it home for me that I wasn't going to be participating in this particular event was what had just transpired about less than 24 hours before that quote-unquote protest, which is really a march, which is really a rally. And it's funny because I say that I say a rendition of this motto that one of my followers on Twitter came up with. He said, "You want to know whether or not something is a rally or a march versus whether it's a protest? All you have to do is look at what the police officers are wearing." What do I mean by that? The day before, not even 24 hours before that, a young man was shot. A young man was shot in his yard for having a cell phone. He was shot in his own backyard. They mistook the cell phone for a crowbar. I don't know how a cell phone looks different or looks similar, to a crowbar. That must have been the newest iPhone 10 plus. Crowbar extended edition. I guess. And once again, this led to to another tragic loss of another young black male by the hands of a police officer. Totally preventable and totally unnecessary. And as it should have led to a march or protest, if you will. It led to protests. But when these people protested peacefully, the cops didn't show up with smiles on their faces. They didn't show up with the immense amount of support that this march and the Women's March got. They didn't show up with that. You know what they showed up with? They showed up with riot gear, assault rifles, batons. There was no permits purchased. There were no permits purchased. There were no buses bought. No buses bought. There was no feel-good speeches. No Time magazine appearances. Probably won't be any justice either. But I think what did it the most for me it was the fact that the Democratic Party, the moment this mass shooting took place, managed to take that tragedy, that message, they took it and they ran with it. And they did what's called astroturfing. Now, what astroturfing simply means that it simply means that they took a movement or a protest or a rally, pretended it was somebody else's, but then they actually funded it. W. Weissman Schultz funded it. Levine funded it. The DNC locally, nationally funded it. The Women's March funded it. So it was funded by multiple sources that were not the kids. Some people may think that's okay. Some people may think it's not, but that's not really what I'm talking about right now. What I'm talking about is the fact that the Democratic Party claims to be the party that is against police brutality. Am I wrong? The Democratic Party pretends as if they are standing with BLM, that they are standing with the black communities in general. They pretend as if they are on the side of justice. But not even 24 hours later, people. Not even 24 hours later. After there was a protest, after this man in Sacramento was shot, and the cops were out there in riot gear. They have the nerve to have black people on stage and David Hoggs and a few other people talking about what we need to do about police brutality. Talking about how important it is that we stand with those who are, have had their lives taken by police officers. There's a phrase that, it's used often. It's a popular cliche, but I think probably now it makes perfect sense. Put your money where your mouth is. When it came to this particular issue of the mass shootings, even though you lied about how the money got there and who funded this, millions of dollars. And celebrities, y'all are just as guilty of this, by the way. But millions of dollars went into this march. Millions. The Women's March even put their money and their weight behind it. But why don't y'all do that for like BLM, for example, or for a movement of gun violence against minorities that we know is, that we don't have to guess whether that happens? It's so nice of you all to include us in your little march. It was so nice. It's like what y'all did at the DNC convention, right? Y'all threw us to the front. Having Dr. Martin Luther King's granddaughter give a speech. But you know how hard it was for me to find pictures of what took place in Sacramento during the protests? I found more clips and pictures of David Hoggs talking about how minorities haven't been given the same platform as him than pictures of the protest that was happening in Sacramento as it was going on in the same day that he was talking about this. So the sad truth is, and once again, don't be shy. You can call and interject however you need to. It's 218-339-8525. Once again, the number is 218-339-8525. But the sad truth is, the lives of people who look like myself are not valued as the same, are not valued as highly as those who look like David Hodges and Casey and Emma Gonzalez. And yes, I include Emma Gonzalez because she is being tokenized. If you go look right now, if you have an Instagram, I encourage you to do so. Go look right now at the March for Our Lives page. The only time they show black people, or that there are pictures with black, is literally all black people. They're taking pictures with, like, it's like the one white person and it's all black people. And then you got all the little kids that they're, upper middle class, wealthy, got pushed to the forefront. One picture that stood out to me significantly was a picture from Time magazine. When you look at that, like, they're standing there tall, proud. They look passionate, prideful. Like they're portrayed as if they are heroes, and they are portrayed as if they are the future. Now, if you look at the Time magazine pictures, covers of anything, I think it's like 2, maybe 3, where they talk about BLM or police violence, it's us running in fear while we're outnumbered by cops. It's us being beat down. They use the name BLM or any black movement as a controversy, like, oh, it's controversy. The controversy behind BLM. Whether or not you agree with their methods or not, which their methods actually aren't that bad. It's every now and then you have a rogue, which is what it is. But that's not my point. My point is the messaging. There are a lot of people who have fought against police brutality that are very, very proud people. Very, very powerful, thought-provoking people. And there has been progress to a degree, at least when it comes to the awareness of police brutality. So why is it that we are portrayed as victims, as helpless, when we damn sure know how to help ourselves? And we've a lot of movement. I know 2 or 3 people right now, I can name off the top of my head that well deserve, the cover of Time magazine for those issues. But that's not how we're depicted. And those kids were not the only ones interviewed by local news. And those kids are not the only ones who are well spoken. Now, David Hoggs quoted a statistic, which is true. That school is 25% African American or black. Now, here's what David Hoggs did not do, which I would have had a little bit more respect for. He said at one point that, they need the same platform as we do. They are underrepresented in the media. And I really don't think I think he was trying to say some buzzwords that sound good with liberals, but he doesn't know what that means. Because guess what? If you truly believe that, you would have done what I did in that scenario. You would have gave up your platform for someone else to speak about that issue. You would have said your 2 sentences and said, you know what? I know somebody will talk about this issue a little bit better than I can. But you crave that spotlight so much. The Democratic Party and CNN and MSNBC and all these people have been pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. And you see these, you see the calls coming in, the interviews coming in. You can just smell your job, but your college application getting into wherever the hell you want to go now. There's a lot of opportunity for all these kids that have been gained from their platform being bolstered by the establishment. But the Democratic Party would not invest $1 into a movement like what they did yesterday and like what they did for the women. Think about this. The Women's March the first year was highly critiqued, rightfully so, because they pushed out women of color from the executive board. There were 0. And they even pushed out like indigenous women who were making complaints like, okay, we don't talk about any of the indigenous women problems, like because rape culture and how indigenous women are treated because they're on reservations. Like that's a huge problem in the Midwest. And they were absolutely refused to have their message heard at the Women's March. To even have it be part of the platform for the Women's March. And then, and all the faces, if you recall, for the Women's March the first time, were pretty much white. And so if you look at this, they a little bit. What's the word for it? I can't think of the word right now, but you know what I'm talking about. They corrected it because they knew that it was going to be highly critiqued again. So if you remember the Women's March this year, really, they did the same thing. So they pushed a bunch of black faces, specifically black women, to the front. They've been doing that a lot lately. They did the same thing for this march. But notice how we have to be a part of their moment, is what I'm saying. We have to be a part of their moment in order for us to have a voice. But they would never give us our own platform, ran by us. They would never give us a network. And it's funny because Nina Turner tweeted something that I don't even think she meant to tweet. It coincidentally came up in the same day. Talking about the Democratic Party pats black people's, they pat us on the back or pat us on the head, specifically black women. How they don't take black people seriously in that party. And are you all surprised by this? You shouldn't be. Because this is how this is how the Democratic Party operates. This is how they have always operated. They dangle carrots in front of the minority community. And there's no genuine engagement or any genuine concern about the black community outside of, can we get them to vote for us? I'm glad that there were some black faces out there, some minority faces out there. Like, nice, cool. But if that mass shooting, I want to be 100% real about this. If that mass shooting had taken place in Compton, which never happens, by the way. There's no mass shootings in the hood, but like it's that culture thing, I think. But if it happened in Chicago, if it happened in Compton, if it happened in Durham, North Carolina, if it happened in, the Bronx, in Little Haiti, which not mass shootings don't happen in Little Haiti, but there are times when there are drive-bys. People get killed, kids get killed because the bullets go into the school. And it barely makes the local news. I guess the question is, if the Democratic Party is so incredibly for the uplifting of minorities in this country, then what the hell? Where's our march? Where is a march for inclusion? When are y'all gonna pay for us to have a march? That's what I'm curious about. Cause I want you all to think about this, right? The Women's March, for example, is the most obvious example, right? It was because they threw this march because they thought that Donald Trump was a threat to women and women's rights, which not necessarily Donald Trump. Republicans, I get that. But I thought it was actually at the beginning, I thought it was just to bolster women's issues and to come up with some substantive policies to change a lot of the discrepancies they have. Got it. That's what I thought. Turned out not to be that. But then they said it was anti-Trump rally because they were worried about Donald Trump and how he's going to affect women. I don't know how one man has that much power to affect all the women in the country, but that's neither here nor there. But here's where the logic falls a little short, because this is the same party who says that minorities would be affected by Donald Trump in the exact same way. Obviously not the exact same way, but in a similar fashion as women would. That's what they campaigned upon. Still, to this day. And yet, notice something. There was no major push to get all the minority groups in this country to coalesce and have their white allies to come out and support them. In the major march, very similar to what we saw with the Women's March and what we saw from March for Our Lives. And what are they going to say? Well, not everybody's black. Yeah, I would say at the Women's March, it was probably half women and half males there supporting the women. Unless you don't want us to find out this little secret that the Democratic Party has, which is that if y'all did something like that for minorities, then maybe the white upper middle class to middle class faux aggressive, fake liberals wouldn't come out and support because they're not actually for minorities? Maybe. Probably. I'm curious. But that's what makes it difficult. That's what made it difficult and what kind of was like the nail in the coffin for my decision to not go to that march. You can fund the organization and the gathering of every marginalized group, every victimized group, except for the group that you need to win your election. Because if you pay for us to become organized, if you elevate us to a particular platform, if you put us all, like you take a woke minority, black, Latino, whatever, and put them on the news, oh, they're not parroting. Like a lot of the times, they're not parroting. Like they're going to tell you exactly how they feel. Not somebody from these upper middle class rich black communities, like or somebody who's upper middle class and they blended in and they're all about rah rah minorityhood, but and they do deal with racism, I'm sure, but it's not the same thing. Like I said, if this happened in Compton, they wouldn't be giving all those Compton kids platforms. They wouldn't even talk about the poor inner city school that won a Harvard tournament, the Harvard debate tournament, and it was like a big deal, or a chess tournament, excuse me, and it was a huge deal, and they wouldn't even talk about that. They don't want black people coalescing. They don't want black people and Latinos working together and then having conversation and be like, hold on. Didn't the Democratic Party promise y'all this? You know what? They promised us the same thing. And then you start talking to the LGBTQ community, and you're like, hey, did the Democratic Party pass? Were they the ones who legalized gay marriage and marriage equality? And no, that was the Supreme Court. And then you start asking other questions. Well, what has the Democratic Party done for Puerto Rico? Isn't the dominant political party in Puerto Rico Democrat? And then you start asking questions like, well, why didn't we have the infrastructure to make sure that we could escape the school when the mass shooting happened, like we have requested time and time again? Well, whose district are we in? Oh, we're in Debbie Wasserman Schultz district. Isn't that a democratically dominant district? Well, then we're the second largest funded district in the country. Didn't we have millions of dollars to get this problem taken care of? Where did the millions of dollars go? And then guess what happens? Then you start, as a minority, holding the Democratic Party accountable. Then you start, as a minority, running for office and building coalitions to vote you in office. In districts, by the way, dominated by minorities, in which your Democratic establishment opponent would no longer be able to win because you as a minority obviously going to be much more of an, especially as a progressive minority and hopefully a truth teller, would be a more attractive option. And then you have this issue that the Democratic Party would encounter on the left, which is that, oh shit, we actually have to start keeping our promises. Because the last thing the Democratic Party wants to deal with, people, the last thing they want to deal with is another Nina Turner. The last thing they want to deal with is another Tulsi Gabbard. The last thing they want to deal with is another Niko House, for that matter. Because we are the reason that they can win in the fashion that they win in. They dangle the carrots. Women, y'all should know they used to do the same thing to y'all. Or no, actually not used to. They're still doing the same thing to y'all. They've done it to you all much longer than they've been doing it to us. Hillary Clinton brags about women's rights and pay equity for women, and the Clinton Foundation is still paying their women unequally. She's not even practicing what she preaches, and with her ridiculous abundance of wealth. The outrageous number of foreign donations into the Clinton Foundation, like their net worth is insane. People don't even know. Legitimately, they don't even know their real net worth. And yet, we're supposed to fall in line. And it sucks because what you then get put in is just like this moral dilemma, right? You get put in this moral dilemma of, well, I know that gun violence is something that we need to protest, or gun violence and gun reform. And then you have this like, well, but is it worth sacrificing my value because I know that we're just being used? Or is this pragmatic? If I go, is it pragmatic? Is that what it would be considered? Because it needs to get talked about. And if it gets talked about, it doesn't matter what way it happens. It just matters that it's being talked about. But the truth of the matter is that it does matter. The messaging, the framing of messaging does matter. It matters because if you don't start noticing these patterns, people, women, once again, y'all the first ones should have known this. What policies have been introduced by the Democratic Party since the 2 women's marches that you've all experienced? After the women's march is over, have y'all issues gotten talked about by the Democratic Party again? Nope. All this energy they're putting into raising money from marches. I have a lot of respect for Paul McCartney, for example. And I'm not going to pretend to know like where he gives all his money to. But once again, these type of things, he said in the quote, obviously, because, you know, John Lennon got shot, he said that gun violence is something very important to him, very personal to him. So is that the only time that we're going to actually act on an issue? Is when it's personal to us? Because if that's the case, then, well, minorities, I hate to break it down to you, but we are screwed, people. We're screwed. The only time that people want to talk about issues is when somebody that looks like them, that is friends with them, that is part of their family. When they're affected by an issue, that's when they want to talk about it. You don't think so? Let's look at the very obvious example of South Africa. Right? The news has been just dominated, well, social media news, I mean, by the, you know, at first it was violence on the white farmers. And then the courts actually ruled in favor of the farmers getting back their land. Now, I told people, I mean, it's trust me, you don't want to hear my very, very, like, blunt explanation of what happened. But, like, it's very hard, people, for me to sympathize with some of these conservatives who are just outraged, and even some progressives who are simply they're outraged by the courts ruling in favor of giving the land back to the people that it was stolen from. And all of a sudden, Africa is in all the headlines. Africa. South Africa this, South Africa that. Is it morally right for this to be allowed? Should we do something about it? Is this another form of oppression? No, it's not. It's not. Want me to tell you how I know that it's not another form of oppression? How many of y'all actually talked about Africa outside of Libya and Hillary Clinton? Like, that's the only time really conservatives like to talk about Africa. But, the only time y'all want to talk about Africa actually is to totally attack it a lot of the times. It's not a good place to live. Look at those countries in Africa. They're so trash. Blah, 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 blah. Farmers have their lands, their homes, their families ravaged daily in Africa. And y'all have said none but a word at all whatsoever. But now that people who look like you are being affected by the same practices that put them in the position that they were in to own that particular land, now it's oppression. Now we have to speak up about it. Now we have to do something about it. Now we have to weigh in on whether or not it's right or wrong. Because you know why? It's out of the norm for the white elite to be on the receiving end of that broomstick while bending over with no lubrication. And then being told that it's history and we have to get over it because that's just how land is won in history. Well, although there was violence, which I do not condone, I don't condone the violence that took place at all. But at the same time, are you surprised? The apartheid ended in 1991. The land should have been given back. You're talking about people who had their land stolen, who, if it was, some land stolen in the 90s and the late 80s, that means that there are people who are alive whose parents had their land stolen. Parents, not their great-great-great-grandmama. Their parents had their land stolen during the apartheid. And through the court system, it was given back to them. And it is so outlandish. It is so uncommon for us to see, like, the white elite of a particular society lose in a court case like that, that we simply cannot fathom. And some people cannot internalize or understand that that is not oppression. That is the court system doing what it's supposed to do, which is restoring justice and equity and making sure that power does not become disproportionate, especially when the power is ill-gotten. Think about how many, that's literally what people say when we took land back from England, gave it to the Americans. Back from France, gave it to the Americans. We just took Mexico's land. We just took that violently, by the way. And they've taken it from Native Americans, was never theirs. And the excuse that we've used time and time again to justify that is that's just how things go. With violent theft, where they use deception to get what they want, because fighting Native Americans straight up was not in their repertoire because they were not as well trained on the field as Native Americans were at the time. They had to use their fighting tactics in order to be successful against the British in a lot of ways. So we get content. And then when we read because even I was like, hold up, is this right? And that's how it's bad. But people, all of a sudden, we start paying attention to Africa because finally white people were affected by something that happened, like the justice system took its course. Justice systems all over the country have been ruling against not all over the country, all over the world have been rooting against Native Americans getting their land back. Like, for example, the Cherokees in the southeast region of the United States had their land taken from them during the Trail of Tears after they did everything that was required of them to be ruled as a sovereign nation. They actually had a legitimate government. They practiced laws. They fell in line with the federal laws of the U.S. And even after they did everything that they were supposed to do, they got their land taken from them anyway. I don't want people to mistake this for all white people are wrong. All white people, all black people are not innocent. All white people are not wrong. But like that should go without being said. If you've watched me long enough, you know damn well I don't think like that. But I want to make a very real point, which is that if you look at this march, they throw white kids to the front for a reason. The Democratic Party does. Because strategically, well, one, the Democratic Party low-key is full of racists. Like, not low-key. Well, it is low-key because a lot of people don't know. But y'all think the Republican Party has a bunch of racists. The Democratic Party, it has the dangerous type of racist, which is they pretend to be your friend right before they stab you in the throat. That type of racist is what I mean. But we've gotten so they know in their minds they can dangle us by a carrot, pretend as if we're part of a movement, while totally excluding us from any legitimate change. And because the world has been the Western world, I should say, because I would even include, and I think a lot of you would agree with me, a lot of my historians and geographers would agree with me that culturally, South Africa, in a lot of ways, would be considered Western. But the Western world has had its history so whitewashed, and the minorities that have been, just totally silenced and oppressed by the Western world over the last 100 years or so, We lose battle after battle after battle after battle in the courts. Canada is probably best known for this. It wasn't, I believe, until the Aboriginals of Australia got their land back that like natives of a particular nation actually had a large victory. But that was voluntary on Australia's behalf. But we look at this South Africa thing, and I don't condone violence. So they did the next best thing, which is go to court, hash it out there, present your arguments. If anything, why are we considering that a victory? We saw it started out a little violent, but it ended up being nonviolent transfer of land from a group that got it through theft and oppression to the rightful owners of the farmland. It was through a court system, through due process. That's not oppression. What is oppression is the fact that farmland makes up such a huge portion of South Africa's economy. White people only make up like 10 or 12%, but they own 80 to 90% of the land. That's oppression. When people who walk around with British accents, they speak Afrikaner, knowing damn well that that's not even close to the dominant accent of Africa. With nuanced dialectic differences, but it's not the same. It's like Trevor Noah, for example, is from South Africa, if you know who he is. Clearly that's not a general African accent. But it was a transfer of land through a court system. And the only reason that it made headlines was because for the first time in history, the court system didn't favor with the elites of that community. And the only reason that a lot of people care about that, conservative and liberal, is because they look like them. They see themselves like, holy shit, is somebody going to take what I have and transfer it to somebody else? Especially when that guilt starts kind of kicking in, like, whoa, I hope I'm not held responsible for something my ancestors did. And I'm not saying I want anybody to be held responsible, but what I am saying is that this is including the Democratic Party. You plug your ears like this. You plug your ears. Pretend like the oppressed aren't being oppressed. If you pretend as if there are people who aren't speaking to you about their issues, like there aren't people who are calling out police brutality, that there aren't people who are calling out how minorities are treated in the workplace. Like I said, just the other day, an article came out saying that even in the military, black people are disproportionately given court-martialed and sentenced to jail than their white counterparts in the military. So there is no distinction between what's going on in the military and what's going on in the civilian world. It's the same thing. Why? Because why do y'all think that Colin Powell is conservative and is registered a Republican? Do you really think he's conservative? Have you heard some of the things that Colin Powell says about the Republican Party? He called his party racist on national television. Colin Powell is an officer an officer in the military. And the only way you can be an officer in the military and reach the level that Colin Powell did, and the only way that you can pursue politics afterwards at that time as a black male and be successful is if you kiss conservative ass. You are not allowed to be progressive or liberal, be an officer, and be a black male and think that you're going to progress in the military. So if you keep being silent, or if the cries of the oppressed are constantly ignored, people, then we can't be surprised by the consequences. If the cries of the oppressed are ignored, then you cannot be surprised by the consequences. It's as simple as us invading Iraq for no reason whatsoever, and then or putting Israel in in the middle of Palestine, giving them weapons, giving them funding, preventing Palestine from becoming sovereign itself, giving them a spot in the United Nations, and then saying, I can't believe that Israel that Israel is victim of terrorist attacks from Palestine or from Palestinians. I can't believe it. Whatever provoked those people, those kind, nice people, to wanting to attack the people of Israel or the country of Israel? I can't imagine. You take their guns, refuse them a government, take their funding, refuse them sovereignty, give Israel a nuclear weapon, give them $70 billion in funding, have them protected by every Western country in the world. What do you expect? You better start listening, people. That being said, thank you all so much for tuning in. Always remember, people, find your balance. Peace.
To providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMOs plus testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away valuable groceries ever again. Take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Simply Clean Foods' primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. Go to simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net today.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
Yo, what's up? Check this out.
The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
Nicotine, alcohol, good drugs. Coincidentally, tax drugs. Ooh, how does this work? Thank God they're taxing alcohol, man. It means we got those good roads we can drive on. Because I'll tell you something, I'll be honest, man. If I were going to legalize a drug, it sure wouldn't have been alcohol. Sorry, there's better drugs and better drugs for you. That's a fact. Pot is a better drug than alcohol. Fact. Fact. Stop your internal dialogue. But Bill, alcohol's shut up! You're wrong. Get over it. I'll prove it to you, man. You're at a ball game or a concert and someone's really violent and aggressive and obnoxious. Are they drunk or are they smoking pot? They're drunk. I have never seen people on pot get in a fight because it is impossible. Hey, buddy. Hey, what? Hey. End of argument.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5. Roger, copy. 3, 2, 1.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio.